Hey, welcome back to The Dive. Today on the show, we have the CEO of Sprott Asset Management. John Ciampaglia is joining us today. He's going to talk all things uranium. But before we bring John on, do me one quick favor and just go ahead and give that subscribe button below me there a quick smash. Hey, John, welcome to The Dive.
Hey, good to see you again.
Okay, so let's dive right into it here. Cameco made headlines when they announced their partnership with Brookfield Renewable Partners for an estimated $4.5 billion. What are your thoughts on the recent partnership? And do you think that news like this affects the sentiment towards uranium?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it caught us all a little bit by surprise, but I think my first comment would be I think it's a very good and healthy sign that the industry is moving forward. And it has been obviously very difficult for some of these companies the last few years. And I think this is a vote of confidence. I think Cameco would not have done this unless they felt very good about the opportunity. I haven't had a chance to debrief with them or listen to their upcoming call, which is next week. But I think it's a very good sign. As a mining company, you sometimes live and die on the back of the commodity price and the cycle. And I think this move obviously smooths out their earnings and their customer base and more vertically integrates them across the entire uranium fuel supply chain. So I could see the strategic rationale as to why they did it. And it'll be interesting to see how they actually take advantage of this opportunity. Clearly, the opportunity's been created in part by the Western utilities clearly trying to move away from Russian services. So I think that's where they see the opportunity for themselves and Westinghouse to take that market share.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit more about Russia and the sanctions. Uranium has been left out this far. However, there's some rumors that uranium sanctions could be coming. Why do you think that Russia's nuclear fuel industry remains untouched?
Yeah, it's a great question. So back in March, April, there was a lot of speculation as to whether sanctions were going to include everything from physical uranium right through the fuel cycle and capture and conversion and enrichment services. And I would say the price of uranium probably popped about $10 a pound on that, because I remember very specifically it one afternoon it popped around $5 a pound and then continued another $5 higher over the course of the week. And a lot of that speculation has completely died down. And the reason why it's died down is I don't think it's going to happen. Not anytime soon. And I think the reason for that is quite simple. There's no excess capacity in the West. And that's a function of the West, Western facilities in France, in Canada, and the United States basically have curtailed or shut in a lot of their capacity. And a lot of those services got outsourced to Russia over the past 5-6 years. And so I think the government and the utilities have very quickly figured out that there is no plan B. While everyone would love to move away from these Russian services, the utilities clearly do not have an option right now. Will they have other options in the next 2 to 3 years? They will, but 2 to 3 years is a long time to go without having complete certainty that they can essentially wean off Russia and basically reshore. And this is one of the, I think, realities that everyone has learned about the last few years around, this term global supply chain, which I would suggest most people had no idea what that term meant pre-COVID, but they clearly understand it now. And so when you offshore these services to different countries, you're essentially beholden to them in terms of whether they will continue to be trusted and reliable partners. And clearly the dynamic with Russia has changed, which is why the Department of Energy in the United States has asked for over $4 billion of funding to basically facilitate the transition away from Russian services to more Western suppliers. But it's going to take time.
So do you think that the West could replace uranium from Russia with any other suppliers, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I think things are, with respect to uranium itself, it's not a big component in terms of what Russia provides the world. And most of it actually comes through JVs that they have with the Kazakhs. So it's not actually produced on Russian soil. Where we're in a bit of a bottleneck is around the conversion services and the enrichment services. Those are the parts of the fuel chain cycle that Russia controls pretty meaningful components of. So with respect to conversion services, that is a real pinch point right now in the West. There is absolutely very little capacity available. With respect to enrichment services, it's even worse. Russia controls almost 40% of global capacity there. So there are facilities in France and Canada and the United States that are going to ramp up, but this does not happen overnight. It's going to take several years, and I think that's just the reality of the the complexity of these operations. I think more recently the price of uranium has been going up not because of speculation around sanctions. I just think it's a tight market, and utilities are clearly becoming more focused on security of supply across not just uranium but conversion and enrichment services, and that is having definitely the desired impact in terms of tightening up the market and making the price definitely more firm. So we've seen recently the price of uranium move from $48 to $52 a pound literally in the last week. So it's starting to move again.
Do you think the ESG narrative with uranium has changed tangibly over the last year?
I do think. I think there's three tangible proof points of that. One, the EU finally including nuclear power as part of their sustainable finance taxonomy. The South Korean government is basically working on the same inclusion, and finally, the UK government is working on a similar framework of including nuclear in sustainable finance taxonomies. What does that mean? Well, it means that if you want to build a new power plant, if you want to upgrade an existing one, or if you want to invest in long-term advanced technologies like small modular reactors, the cost of capital to you will be lower if it is included in this sustainable taxonomy. And so any advantage that a nuclear power plant or a utility can get provides it economic incentives to make these big capital intensive investments. So I think at the nuclear power plant level, utility level, it makes a difference. In terms of our investors going to include these things in their portfolios, I've definitely heard from some institutions in Europe that said, we can't today, but once these things get officially ratified, then it's up for potential investment. So I do think it helps the investment, it helps the kind of capital expenditure side of the equation as well. So I do think it's all very positive.
Now, if you take the Dixie, which is up over 20% year to date, and apply it to the price of uranium, the price is now above $60 relative to last year. Do you see this strength continuing into 2023?
Yeah, I think we have a very constructive view on the price of uranium over the next several years. And we say that because it's the only way to fix the supply deficit. One of our key messages that we repeat all the time is you can't have an industry that needs 180 million pounds of uranium and only growing as more power plants come online or get life extensions, and have primary mine production at 130 million pounds. Sooner or later, you're going to run out of secondary inventories, and then you do run a real risk of not having enough fuel. And so the industry basically mitigates that risk by always having a lot of inventory on hand. But the reality is every month there's more uranium that's consumed, and you need to reload your contracts. And I think as utilities come back and negotiate more longer term contracts for larger quantities, that's clearly what the producers are signaling to us. You're starting to see utilities strike offtake agreements with more junior uranium miners, which I think is a very healthy sign as well in terms of helping them finance the next generation of mines. All of this to us signals that there's a lot of confidence building in the system, and those capital investments that are being made in those long-term purchase agreements utilities are making are really underpinning the industry and are providing an incentive price so that long-term we do have security of supply.
What are the conversations with institutional and large investors like right now in regards to uranium?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say that the general macro environment right now is horrible. We all know that. It's been a really challenging year when you think about the trillions of dollars that have been lost on paper across currency markets, bond markets, stock markets, real estate markets, commodity markets. So it's tough out there. Now, when we talk to the investors interested in uranium, I think that they remain very committed to the thesis. They remain very committed to their investments. I've heard many institutions tell me, we're not selling anything. It's one of the few things that's actually worked in our portfolio this year. So from that perspective, I'm very encouraged that they remain very committed to their investments in this sector. Do I see them, lining up and adding more capital to the sector right now? No, I do not. They are not really doing much of anything. They are really playing it safe right now and waiting for the next signal. They're looking for signals, whether they come from the Federal Reserve pausing, whether inflation starts to moderate. And there's always this kind of fear of another black swan happening, almost like a Lehman type event where a financial institution gets in trouble and creates kind of a cascading downward spiral. So there's a lot of nervousness right now with these institutions, but I can tell you with the uranium investments, they seem to remain very confident. So that, I think, in this environment is a huge win.
Okay, now let's talk about the Sprott Physical Uranium Trust. When you took over the fund in 2021, it had 18 million pounds. What is the strategy here, and will you continue to add to the stockpile?
Yeah, for sure. Our strategy is to keep allowing investors to express their view in the physical commodity market. We had a very slow and very quiet summer as all markets were correcting. What was interesting to us, though, is that the price of uranium really found a floor in August at $48. It just seemed to be pinned there. And when the price would kind of drift back to 48, you definitely would see some utilities come in, nibble away in the spot market, pick up some pounds. And the price has been very, very firm, despite many other commodities softening over the last few months. In the last, 2 months, we've seen a real pickup of interest. The news around the Japanese nuclear restart seemed to be the first catalyst that we experienced, where that was a piece of news investors have been waiting years and years for. And they really took it as a signal that, okay, governments around the world, whether it's California, whether it's South Korea, or Japan, are really starting to U-turn around energy policy and supporting nuclear energy. And that was a very strong signal to a lot of institutional investors. So we started seeing a pickup there. We've purchased well over 1 million pounds since late August. So we're back to, the fund is back to a premium to its NAV, and we've been back in terms of acquiring more material. The market's quite tight. It's hard to find material. We definitely see other parties coming into the spot market of late and chipping away and buying some material. So I think that's a healthy sign that people are coming back into the spot market and starting to buy more uranium.
Definitely. Okay, well, John, that's all we have for you today. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your expertise with us.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Thanks so much for watching today. We'll be back again tomorrow with the latest news and updates. But in the meantime, if you could let me know where you see the price of uranium heading in the comments below, that would be great. Bye.